First contact deception. The Valkyrie Imperium had conquered 17 star systems before discovering Earth. Their protocols were efficient, clinical, and invariable. Observe, assess, infiltrate, and dominate. From the bridge of the Valkyrie flagship Inexorable Destiny, Supreme Commander Telvac watched the blue-green planet rotate lazily on the main view screen, his 4 violet eyes narrowed in calculated assessment. Preliminary scans complete, Supreme Commander, announced Science Director Nilara, her translucent fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. The species calls themselves humans. Technological assessment places them at development stage 3.4, barely interplanetary. They've established primitive outposts on their moon and neighboring planet, but their propulsion systems remain predominantly chemical-based. Telvac's secondary breathing membranes fluttered in amusement. Chemical rockets. In this era, how quaint. Yet curious anomalies exist. Nilara continued, her tone shifting. Their global communication network is surprisingly sophisticated, and their energy production methods appear inconsistent. Elaborate, Telvac commanded. They maintain fusion reactors alongside primitive combustion plants. Their military employs directed energy weapons on some platforms, while others rely on kinetic projectiles. It's as if their technological development lacks coherent progression. Intelligence Officer Krell stepped forward, his exoskeleton clicking softly against the polished floor. Resource limitations, perhaps, or political fragmentation. Possibly, Nilara conceded. But the pattern is unusually systematic for mere developmental inconsistency. Telvac dismissed the concern with a wave of his primary appendage. Irrelevant. Prepare the diplomatic contingent. Standard protocol. Offer technological exchange. Assess leadership structure. Identify exploitation vectors. And if they resist? Krell inquired. Telvac's mouth ridge formed what passed for a smile in his species. They won't. Stage 3.4 civilizations never do. They're too enamored with the possibilities of advancement to recognize subjugation when it's dressed as opportunity. 3 solar cycles later, Ambassador Zurich stood before the United Earth Council in Geneva, Switzerland. His translators had been programmed with all Earth languages, and his diplomatic implants analyzed every micro-expression from the assembled humans. Behind practiced pleasantries, he cataloged weaknesses, assessed threats, and calculated the most efficient path to Valkyrie dominance. The Valkyrie Imperium extends greetings of peace and cooperation, Zurich announced, his voice modulator perfectly calibrated to inspire both awe and comfort. We offer friendship and technological exchange to welcome humanity into the greater galactic community. UN Secretary General Dr. Maya Chen smiled warmly. Too warmly, Zurich thought. Where was the expected awe? The reverence. The desperation to please that most primitive species exhibited during first contact. The people of Earth welcome the Valkyrie, Dr. Chen replied. We're honored by your visit and look forward to cultural and scientific exchange. Perhaps you would care to tour some of our facilities. We'd be delighted to show you how we've developed. An excellent suggestion, Zurich agreed, noting the peculiar phrasing. Not what we've developed, but how we've developed. A linguistic quirk, surely. The first stop was Cape Canaveral Space Center, where massive chemical rockets stood alongside more modern vessels. You maintain these historical launch systems, Zurich inquired, gesturing toward a towering rocket being prepared for launch. Flight Director Colonel James Rodriguez nodded. We find value in technological diversity. Chemical rockets are reliable, well understood, and can be manufactured anywhere with basic industrial capacity. But surely your gravitic lifters are more efficient, Zurich pressed. Efficiency isn't always the primary consideration, Rodriguez replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Redundancy has saved us more than once. Similar patterns emerged at every facility. At the Global Defense Command in Colorado, General Joe proudly demonstrated a railgun system firing simple metal projectiles. Fascinating, commented military attaché Drax, who had accompanied Zurich. though surely your particle beam arrays would be more effective against advanced threats. Each weapon has its purpose, General Zhao answered. Some threats require finesse, others respond better to direct approaches. That evening, in the secure confines of the Valkyrie diplomatic vessel, Xerix conferred with his team. Their development pattern defies standard evolutionary models, Nylera insisted. No species naturally develops in such a disjointed manner. Perhaps they acquired technology from another source, suggested Krell. Salvaged wreckage or limited contact with another species. Our historical surveys show no evidence of previous contact, Nylera countered. And if they'd reverse-engineered advanced technology, we would see attempts to standardize around the highest capabilities. Instead, they deliberately maintain disparate systems. Your assessment, Ambassador. Telvac's hologram asked from aboard the flagship in high orbit. Xerix hesitated before answering. They exhibit unusually low anxiety for a species experiencing first contact, almost as if they've been expecting us. Impossible, Telvac dismissed. Their detection capabilities are insufficient to have identified our approach. What of their military capacity? Limited, Drax reported confidently. Their orbital defenses are sparse. Ground forces rely heavily on chemical explosives and kinetic weapons. Their most advanced vessels use rudimentary shield technology and fusion drives, nothing that presents significant challenge to Imperial forces. Xerix wasn't so certain. During the tour of their quantum research facility, he'd noticed something peculiar. The scientists had carefully explained systems that were visibly operational, while other equipment remained conspicuously unaddressed. When he'd inquired about a particularly interesting array of crystalline structures, Dr. Takashi had smoothly redirected the conversation. "There's something we're missing," Xerix said slowly. "I recommend extended observation before proceeding with standard protocols." Telvac's hologram flickered with impatience. "Unnecessary. Their technological assessment is clear. Begin Phase 2. I want exploitation vectors identified within 5 cycles." As the hologram disappeared, Nylera approached Xerix privately. "Your reservation is noted, Ambassador. I share your concerns. Their inconsistency feels deliberate," Xerix murmured, "as if they're showing us precisely what they want us to see." 3 days later, Xerix stood beside Dr. Chen as they watched a military exercise in the Arctic Circle. Human forces demonstrated conventional warfare tactics, deploying vehicles, aircraft, and infantry with competent but unremarkable efficiency. "Your thermal adaptation technology is impressive," Xerix remarked, genuinely surprised by the humans' ability to operate in the extreme cold. Dr. Chen smiled. "We've learned to work with our environment rather than against it." Suddenly, alarms blared across the observation post. A communications officer rushed to Dr. Chen, whispering urgently in her ear. "I apologize, Ambassador," she said, her composure unshaken. "A situation has developed that requires my attention. Colonel Davis will continue the tour." Before Xerix could respond, his own communication implant activated. Krell's voice, tense and urgent. "Ambassador, return to the vessel immediately. The humans are deploying previously undetected orbital platforms. Supreme Commander Telvac has ordered preliminary invasion preparations." Xerix felt the first stirrings of genuine concern. Something wasn't right. The humans' reaction to the emergency had been too coordinated, too calm, as if they'd been expecting it. As his transport lifted toward the diplomatic vessel, Xerix gazed down at the sprawling human military installation below. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he found himself considering an unsettling possibility. What if everything the Valkyrie had observed about human technology was exactly what the humans wanted them to see? The facade unravels. On Day 17 of the Valkyrie diplomatic mission to Earth, Supreme Commander Telvac made his decision. The human inconsistencies were irrelevant. Their technology posed no serious threat to Imperial dominance. The invasion would proceed according to standard protocol. Deploy infiltration units to these 17 strategic locations, Telvac ordered, highlighting targets across the holographic globe. Once our intelligence network is established, we'll proceed with the military phase. Science Director Nilara's facial membranes pulsed with concern. Commander, Ambassador Xerx's latest reports suggest the humans may be concealing their true capabilities. Based on what evidence? Telvac demanded. Observational discrepancies, Nilara replied. Energy signatures that don't match visible technology. Communications frequencies that disappear from monitoring. And the humans seem remarkably unconcerned by our presence. Psychological analysis suggests they're simply naive, Krell interjected. They show classic indicators of a species that hasn't experienced interstellar conflict. Telvac's patience was wearing thin. Speculation wastes time. Deploy the units. Within hours, 300 elite Valkyrie infiltrators descended to Earth's surface in stealth pods, targeting military installations, government facilities, and communications hubs. Their mission: gather final intelligence and sabotage critical infrastructure before the main invasion. None of them reported back. This is unprecedented, Krell admitted, mandibles clicking in agitation as he delivered the news. All units activated their arrival beacons, but we've received no subsequent communication. Telvac's secondary heart accelerated slightly. Deploy surveillance drones to their last known locations. The drones found nothing. No signs of combat. No evidence of capture. The infiltrators had simply vanished. Explain, Telvac demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. Before anyone could answer, the ship's sensors detected multiple objects rising from Earth's surface. Not missiles or attack craft, but simple satellites, hundreds of them, deploying in a complex geometric pattern around the planet. Primitive observation platforms, the sensor officer reported dismissively. Nilara wasn't convinced. Their configuration suggests a coordinated network, but I'm detecting minimal power signatures. It's as if they're... Supreme Commander, interrupted the communications officer. We're receiving a transmission from the human leadership. Dr. Maya Chen's face appeared on the main view screen, her expression calm but resolute. Commander Telvac, I must inform you that we've detained your infiltration teams. They're unharmed but will remain in custody pending discussion of your rather disappointing breach of diplomatic protocols. Telvac's facial ridges darkened with anger. You have committed an act of war against the Valkyrie Imperium. Return our personnel immediately or face the consequences. Chen's expression didn't change. We were hoping for peaceful relations, Commander, but your actions suggest you harbor less than friendly intentions. Perhaps a demonstration of mutual understanding is required. The screen split to show footage from inside the Valkyrie flagship, impossible footage of corridors and command centers that no human should have been able to access, let alone transmit. How? Telvac began. Your scanning technology is impressive, Chen continued conversationally, but it has specific blind spots, particularly when it comes to detecting technologies that operate on principles you haven't yet discovered. Telvac's rage boiled over. Prepare main weapons. Target their primary defense installations. The weapons officers rushed to comply, but suddenly froze, staring at their consoles in confusion. Weapons systems are not responding, Commander, one reported. Targeting arrays are online but firing mechanisms are locked. Override. Impossible, sir. The systems aren't damaged. They simply won't execute commands. On the view screen, Chen continued. We didn't disable your weapons entirely, Commander. That would be unnecessarily provocative. We've simply introduced a verification protocol that prevents them from targeting Earth. A safety measure, you understand. Telvac's mind raced through possibilities, each more alarming than the last. Launch fighters, he ordered. Manual weapons only. The hangar doors opened, but as the first Valkyrie fighters emerged, they encountered a strange phenomenon. Spheres of distorted space, hundreds of them, each about 3 meters in diameter, surrounded the ships. Within seconds, the fighters stopped responding to commands, drifting powerless. "What is happening?" Telvac demanded. Nylara's scientific training was failing her. "They appear to be localized fields of... I'm not certain. The laws of physics seem altered within those spheres." "Commander," interrupted the sensor officer, "the satellites they deployed. They're generating these fields." On the view screen, Chen smiled sympathetically. "Your fighters are fine, Commander. We've simply created local bubbles where certain electromagnetic principles operate differently. Your engines will resume normal function once they're returned to your hangar." Telvac felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military command: uncertainty. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "The same thing we've wanted from the beginning," Chen replied. "Peaceful cultural and scientific exchange between our civilizations, but on equal terms, not as conqueror and conquered." "Impossible," Telvac scoffed, though with less conviction than before. "Your technological level cannot possibly match the Imperium's." "About that," Chen said, and the view screen shifted to show a different view. Orbital imagery of a massive installation phasing into visibility beneath the Pacific Ocean. "We've maintained two technological tracks for the past century, Commander. The one we show to the galaxy, and the one we keep to ourselves." The screen continued displaying hidden installations emerging across Earth and its orbital space, advanced facilities that had somehow remained completely undetected by Valkyrie scans. "We detected your scout vessels 30 years ago," Chen explained. "We observed how you cataloged and later subjugated the Proxima Centauri colonies. So we developed a strategic response we call the Shepherd Protocol. Appear technologically primitive while developing targeted countermeasures for potential threats." Ambassador Xerix, who had been silently observing the exchange, stepped forward. "The technological inconsistencies were deliberate," Chen confirmed. "We maintained older systems alongside advanced ones, creating the impression of uneven development. Your analysts correctly identified the pattern but misinterpreted its meaning." Telvac struggled to process this revelation. "If what you claim is true, why reveal yourselves now? Why not wait until we launched a full invasion?" "Because unnecessary conflict benefits neither of us," Chen answered simply. "We prefer alliance to confrontation when possible." As if to emphasize the point, new readings appeared on the Valkyrie sensors, energy signatures emerging from lunar bases, asteroid installations, and orbital platforms. Signatures that dwarf the Valkyrie fleet's combined output. "Our delegation will arrive in 1 hour to discuss terms for the release of your infiltration teams and the establishment of proper diplomatic relations," Chen concluded. "I suggest you use that time to reconsider your approach to interspecies contact, Commander." As the transmission ended, silence fell over the Valkyrie command center. Telvac stared at the tactical display, showing his fleet now effectively surrounded by previously invisible human defenses. "How did we miss this?" he whispered, more to himself than his officers. Nylara answered anyway. "Because we saw what we expected to see, Commander. They understood our psychological and technological biases and exploited them perfectly." Xerix stepped forward. "They knew we would dismiss their chemical rockets as primitive, while failing to question why an advanced society would maintain them. They knew our sensors would focus on detecting familiar energy signatures, while overlooking unconventional approaches. In other words," Krell concluded grimly, "they studied us more effectively than we studied them." Telvac gazed at the blue-green planet below, now revealed as something far more formidable than he had imagined. For the first time in the history of the Valkyrie Imperium, a conquest would need to be reconsidered. Checkmate. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the EDS Deception, Earth's first officially acknowledged interstellar vessel, watching her small diplomatic fleet approach the massive Valkyrie flagship. The irony wasn't lost on her. After decades of hiding humanity's true capabilities, they were now deliberately showcasing them. "Status report," she requested. "All systems nominal, Admiral," her XO Commander Jackson replied. The Valkyrie fleet remains in defensive posture, no signs of weapons charging or fighter deployment. And our contingency measures. Fully operational. Phase shift defense grid is standing by. Quantum displacement weapons are hot but safe. Vasquez nodded, satisfied. The diplomatic approach was genuine. Earth truly wanted peaceful relations with the Valkyrie. But centuries of human history had taught that sincere negotiations required credible deterrence. As the Deception docked with the Valkyrie flagship, Vasquez led her team through the airlock. She noticed the subtle reactions of the Valkyrie officers, the widening of secondary eyelids, the stiffening of posture, as they noted the sophistication of the humans' environmental suits and equipment. Supreme Commander Telvac awaited them in what humans would call a conference room, though its alien geometries reflected Valkyrie sensibilities. Beside him stood Ambassador Xerix, Science Director Nelara, and Intelligence Officer Krell. Admiral Vasquez, Telvac greeted, his voice modulator struggling to conceal his tension. "Welcome aboard the inexorable Destiny." "Thank you, Commander," Vasquez replied, removing her helmet. "I believe we have much to discuss." "Indeed." Telvac gestured to the conference table, beginning with how you concealed your true technological status from our most advanced detection systems. Vasquez smiled slightly. "Simply put, we designed our advanced technologies specifically to exploit the limitations in your scanning methodologies." "Impossible," Nelara interjected. "You couldn't have known our capabilities before we arrived." Dr. Michael Chen, Maya's brother and Earth's leading genotechnologist, activated a holographic display showing the trajectory of a small Valkyrie vessel from nearly 3 decades earlier. "This scout ship entered our solar system in 2097, he explained. "It observed Earth for approximately 6 months before departing. During that time, we captured and analyzed its scanning emissions, communication protocols, and propulsion signatures." Krell's exoskeleton clicked as he shifted uncomfortably. "That vessel was equipped with our most advanced stealth systems, which work brilliantly against species who don't know what to look for," Chen acknowledged. "But once we detected your presence, we focused our entire scientific community on understanding and countering your technology." "But how?" Nelara demanded. "The technological gap should have been insurmountable." Admiral Vasquez leaned forward. "Human history is filled with technologically superior forces being defeated by primitive opponents who understood the terrain and adapted their tactics accordingly. We applied those lessons on a global scale." "The Shepherd Protocol," Xerix murmured. "Exactly," Vasquez confirmed. "We maintained 2 technological tracks, visible and concealed. The visible track progressed at a rate consistent with your expectations for a young species. The concealed track focused exclusively on technologies that would be effective against potential threats." "Like us," Telvac concluded darkly. "Like any technologically advanced species with conquest on its mind," Vasquez corrected. "Our analysis of your scout ship's data collection patterns suggested a civilization that categorizes others primarily as resources to be exploited." The holographic display shifted to show the complex satellite network now surrounding Earth. "Our phase shift defense grid," Chen explained, "creates localized distortions in spacetime that selectively interfere with targeting systems, propulsion, or energy weapons. The individual satellites emit minimal energy until activated, making them virtually invisible to conventional scans." "And our infiltrators?" Krell asked. "Contained within temporal isolation fields," Chen replied. "From their perspective, only seconds have passed. They're completely unarmed." Telvac's facial membranes darkened with anger. "You realize the Imperium will not tolerate this humiliation when our full fleet arrives." "It won't," Vasquez interrupted calmly. "At least, not for the purpose you're suggesting." She activated another holographic display showing the Valkyrie homeworld and its orbital infrastructure. "While you were observing Earth, we were studying the Valkyrie Imperium," she explained. "We've had stealth observation posts in your key systems for over 15 years. We understand your command structure, defense protocols, and communication methods. The implications were clear. Earth could strike at the heart of the Imperium if provoked. A heavy silence fell over the conference room. Finally, Ambassador Xerix spoke. If your capabilities are as you describe, you could have destroyed our fleet when we arrived. Why invite us to negotiate instead? Vasquez's expression softened slightly. Because despite your Imperium's history of conquest, we believe coexistence is preferable to conflict. Human history is filled with wars that could have been avoided through understanding and respect. We're offering a genuine alliance, added Chen. Your civilization excels in areas where we're still developing. We've focused our concealed research primarily on defensive technologies, not expansion or resource extraction. Telvac studied the humans with new eyes. You prepared for war while hoping for peace. An old human wisdom, Vasquez acknowledged. We call it speaking softly while carrying a big stick. And your big stick remained hidden until necessary, Xerix observed thoughtfully. Precisely, Chen confirmed. Our visible technology. The chemical rockets, the kinetic weapons, the fusion plants, all functioned perfectly well for their intended purposes, but they also served as a strategic facade, encouraging potential adversaries to underestimate us. Telvac remained silent for several moments, processing the implications. The Valkyrie Imperium had never encountered a species so thoroughly prepared for their approach. Every conquest protocol, every subjugation strategy in their arsenal had been anticipated and countered before they even arrived. What terms do you propose? He asked finally. Admiral Vasquez outlined Earth's position. The immediate cessation of all hostile activities, the establishment of equitable trade relations, cultural exchange programs, and mutual defense agreements. Most significantly, Earth demanded the Valkyrie acknowledge humanity as equals in the galactic community, not subjects or potential conquests. As the negotiations proceeded, Science Director Nilara approached Dr. Chen privately. Your phase shift technology, she began hesitantly. It operates on principles our science has only theorized. Would your people consider sharing this knowledge? Chen smiled. That's precisely what we hope for, Director. Exchange, not exploitation. Your gravitational manipulation techniques could revolutionize our infrastructure development. Perhaps we could establish a joint research initiative. 6 months later, the first joint Valkyrie human scientific outpost was established in the Alpha Centauri system. Ambassador Xerix, now appointed as the Imperium's permanent diplomatic representative to Earth, addressed the assembled dignitaries. The Valkyrie Imperium has conquered 17 star systems in its history, he began. Earth would have been the 18th, if not for an approach to interspecies relations that our civilization had never before encountered. Where we expected fear, we found preparation. Where we sought to exploit technological gaps, we discovered they were illusions created specifically to mislead us. He gestured toward the human delegation, led by Admiral Vasquez and Dr. Chen. The humans taught us a valuable lesson. True strength lies not merely in technological superiority, but in the wisdom to use it judiciously. Their Shepherd Protocol, presenting a facade of primitive technology while developing targeted countermeasures, has forced a fundamental reassessment of Valkyrie expansion philosophy. Aboard the Deception, now serving as Earth's flagship for the joint mission, Admiral Vasquez gazed at the stars visible through the observation dome. Do you think it will last? Asked Commander Jackson, joining her. Vasquez considered the question. The alliance? Perhaps. The Valkyrie are pragmatic, if nothing else. They recognize that subjugating Earth would cost more than it's worth. And the other species they conquered. That's our next challenge, Vasquez acknowledged. But change comes gradually. Today, we've established that appearing technologically primitive doesn't make a civilization weak. Sometimes it makes them the wisest predators in the galaxy. As if to emphasize her point, the Deception's supposedly decorative hull patterns, subtly reconfigured, enabling the next generation of stealth technology designed to counter threats humanity hadn't yet encountered. After all, the wolves were still out there among the stars, and Earth would continue wearing its sheep's clothing while sharpening its teeth.